Hey guys, welcome back. We are now on video 4 for chapter 5 in micro. We're looking at the elasticity of supply. We finished looking at the elasticity of demand. So just like the elasticity of demand is about how sensitive the quantity demanded is to the price, elasticity of supply is about how sensitive quantity supplied is to the price. Now remember, what we're doing is we are dividing a fraction by a fraction as far as the formula goes, but we simplified it into 3 steps, and we'll do that again for elasticity of supply. What is the elasticity of supply if price increases by 10% and quantity supplied increases by 5? We're just trying to keep it very simple. Well, it's going to be 0.5, and this makes it, you should know by now, inelastic. Because just like when elasticity of demand is less than 1, it means inelastic demand. When elasticity of supply is less than 1, it's called inelastic supply. Okay. How do I want you to take this in everyday terms? Remember, the word elastic is flexible. When supply is elastic, it means it's a very good thing for the seller. So think of elastic supply as the favorable one, because the seller has the flexibility to increase production more when the price rises, but to also cut back on inventory more when the price drops. Because the whole point for sellers is they want to follow the price. When the prices are rising, this is the time for them to capitalize. So they want to push as much of the inventory as possible. When they have elastic supply, then they can increase the quantity supplied, which is the inventory or the production or the amount being provided. It's all the same language, remember, by a greater percentage than the price. And when the price drops, and it's not a very good thing for them, it's an unfavorable situation, they want to protect themselves by being able to cut back. The more elastic the supply is, the more they can cut back. And the more inelastic it is, the less they can actually cut back. So this is what the whole point of elasticity of supply. Now we're going to look at the 4 types. Now remember, you have a homework where you get to apply all these formulas, and you get to use your calculator a lot, and it may be a little tedious, but you practice. Then you have the exercises. Don't forget to submit those and do your best with them. Okay, here are the different types of elasticity of supply. Just like there are 5 for demand, there are 5 for supply, and they're pretty much the same. Elastic, inelastic, unit elastic, perfectly inelastic. Let's start with the elastic. Elastic, the curve looks pretty much like you expect. It is a gentle slope here, and the slope tries to mimic more horizontal. And if we were to take 2 points and apart, we will see that the price change. Okay, so I decided to kind of swap out that last slide and give you something where you can read with me a little bit better. Okay, so here are the 5 types, right? We have elastic supply. What is elastic supply? The price change is smaller than the quantity change. You can just confirm it visually. You can see that how much is changing in quantity is a lot bigger than price. That means this is a good thing for businesses. It means, imagine if the price jumps up, and it does because it goes from price to price 1. So the price is increasing and the quantity can seriously compensate. The seller can take serious advantage and increase the inventory quite a bit. This is very good for them. Inelastic supply is the opposite. The price is rising. The seller knows they should take advantage, kind of like, for instance, there's a hurricane and people are wanting generators. People want generators. I kept wanting to say refrigerator for some reason. People want generators, but the price of generators is jumping really, really quickly, but the seller doesn't have the ability to bring more generators quickly enough to the market, so the quantity that they increase is not as much, so they can't take the best advantage, because at minimum they should break even, right? At minimum it should be unitary elastic. If the price jumps by 50%, they want to be able to catch up their inventory by 50%, for instance. But here they're not able to. The price might jump by 50%, but the quantity only by 20 or 25 or 30. That means they're not quite as flexible. Unitary is, like I said, it's the same percentage. It's a proportional change for the price and the quantity demanded. Now over here, remember, the more horizontal it goes, the more elastic it is. The logic applies just the same. So in this case, you have a horizontal supply curve, which means that at this price, an indefinite amount can actually be provided. It's just an indefinite amount is going to be supplied of units, and it is at this particular price. So this can also be oil. In case of this one here, where you're looking at a vertical supply curve, so let's make this a little bit bigger, a little easier to see. What's happening is that the quantity stays the same regardless of a price change. So this could be, for instance, let's say a movie theater. Not a movie theater. Let's take something more interesting. Say a play. It's a Broadway play, and the price of the tickets keeps rising, but the amount of seats available is the same, right? The theaters are going to get bigger because the tickets are selling for $2,000 each instead of $200. So the price is rising, but the number of seats available for that price is just going to be what it is, and this creates a vertical curve. So the closer to vertical, the more inelastic the supply is. The closer to horizontal, the more elastic it is. Elastic supply is elasticity greater than 1. When you calculate it and apply the formula, you have a more than 1 number. Inelastic demand, you have a decimal, it's a less than 1. Unitary, it equals 1. Perfectly inelastic equals 0. And perfectly elastic equals infinity, and you can see that right here because it the amount supplied can be infinite against the same exact price where the independent curve actually exists right here at this P. So these are the 5 types of elasticity of supply. Now, elasticity of supply and total revenue. This one is rather simple because there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied, then clearly there's going to be always a direct relationship between price and total revenue. So whether the supply is elastic or the supply is inelastic, there's going to be a direct relationship, and that is set by the relationship between the price and the quantity that is causing the relationship to be the same in the same way directly related between price and revenue. The difference though is this. If the elasticity is elastic, the revenues jump by more than they jump down here when it is inelastic. So let's look at this example, right? So the price goes from 10 to 11. This is a nice healthy jump in price. The quantity supplied follows, and the total revenues increase from 10,000 to 13,200. But down here, the price increases by 10% if we're not using the mid-range method, just normal math. But the quantity, instead of increasing by 20% up here, it's actually increasing by only 5%. And consequently, because it's inelastic, because this 10% is less than the 5%, is more than the 5%, so this is definitely inelastic. The total revenues still go up, but they go up by less. So I have it in here as like less higher revenues. It's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. The rate of increase is different. And when the supply is unit elastic or unitary elastic, the total revenues remain the same because you have the same exact, if you have a formula and both sides of the equation change by the same percentage, then everything remains constant. This is also true for elasticity of demand. I don't know if I wrote it. I don't know if I specifically pointed it out to you or not, so I'm pointing it out now. Both unitary elasticity of demand and unitary elasticity of supply have constant or revenues. If that's the case, their revenues remain the same. Okay, now the determinants of price elasticity of supply. There might be 3 for demand, but there are 4 for supply, and don't confuse them with the non-price determinants of supply. These are the determinants of price elasticity of supply. There are 4. The availability of resources, the company's ability to hold stock, which means warehouse, the capacity how much capacity the company has left, how many trucks are free, how many machines are free, how many workers are free, how many raw materials can they get and how quickly. And then this one is the length of production period. So let's go over them one at a time. The easier the availability of resources is, for instance, if you produce canola oil, and you're looking at the seeds that you need, the more of those seeds there are and the easier it is to go from supplier to supplier, the more you're going to be able to increase your supply at will when you're following the prices. Take something like hops. Hops are not in great supply. And so, for instance, you find out that you notice that microbreweries are always more expensive than macrobreweries. Well, that's because macrobreweries are able to get to the resources first, and actually I can tie that to warehousing because macrobreweries can store all that hops. They can buy it when it's cheapest in the year and store it. The microbreweries don't have the ability to store as much. They usually are just small operations. They also don't have as much capacity. Between not being able to buy as much up front and not being able to buy it when it's cheaper and not being able to warehouse it, they are not going to have the same elasticity of supply as the macro brewers who are capable of it. So the easier it is for you to acquire the raw materials in the first place, or the labor, like for instance, the elasticity of supply for something like finding Uber drivers is going to be greater than finding a truck driver. Why? Because truck drivers are specialized drivers. They have to acquire skill. They have to get a special license. There are fewer of them. So if you're looking for truck drivers last minute, you're not going to be able to put as many trucks on the road as quickly as you want, as if you were just looking for like anybody using their car to take anybody to the airport. That is going to tighten that elasticity for truck drivers if a company needs them and is looking for them, because they're more specialized. There are fewer of them in the first place. Not easy to acquire that skill. Warehousing. The more you can stock up, like I gave you the example of hops, the more you can take advantage of sales and the more you can have it ready under your elbow. It's right there sitting in your warehouse and you can just tap into it whenever you want, whether it is warehousing raw materials or whether it is warehousing a final product. You might not want to keep a final product in too much of it, but if you want to, you can. That makes a difference in how quickly you can provide a product when the prices are higher. If you have more time, I mean, obviously, remember when the PS4 ran? I think it was the PS4, might have been the PS3, but remember how it was near Christmas time and then they had a problem with their production line and even everybody was waiting for them for Christmas, but they can't move Christmas. They can't say, oh, let's move Christmas to March, then we can deliver all the units we wanted. Well, they just didn't have enough weeks to fix the problems they had because of their supply chain at the time. And so they missed delivering a lot of units for Christmas and they missed that opportunity because they didn't have enough time. So when sellers have more time to deliver a product, they're going to deliver more of it. But when they have less, well, their hands are tied. More capacity. How free are your capital, as in your machinery? How free is your labor, as in your workers? Is there a way for you to get more, overtime from them? Can you easily hire more people, for instance? What about the plant? How big is the plant? What about the number of trucks you have? What about, your suppliers and what's your distribution doing? The point is, the more available idle capacity you have, the quicker you can bring a product to market. Because you can do more in a short period of time because you have the room, you have the idle resources that now can be taken advantage of. When you don't have as much to begin with and you're saturating your capacity, then somebody is going to give you a call and say, hey, can you, double up the order? And it's going to be like, no, because all of our machines are going, they're going 24/7. All of our workers are engaged. All of our trained, capable people are busy. They're already engaged. We don't have enough. We can't maybe secure more delivery or faster delivery with somebody else. There are too many hurdles. No, you can't get more. So again, the 4R. The more available the resource, the higher the elasticity of supply. More you can actually warehouse or stock, higher elasticity of supply. More time, same thing. More capacity, same thing. Okay, guys, this concludes our last our last video from chapter 5. No, it's not our last chapter. Don't get excited. We still have many to go. All right, thank you. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next video. See you in chapter 6. Bye-bye.